I'm Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, and it is a distinct pleasure to have you here with us tonight. I also happen to serve, my other job is I'm on the board of directors of Friends of Public Radio Arizona, a nonprofit organization which works to support public radio in Arizona, which means KJZZ and KBOC. Friends of Public Radio is a principal sponsor of this forum, along with Rio Salado Community College and South Mountain Community Colleges. The Maricopa Community College District is one of the largest providers of higher education in the United States. This district operates 10 colleges, 2 skill centers, numerous education centers, and is dedicated to educational excellence and to meeting the needs of the business community and the citizens of Arizona. And I can tell you, from the perspective of the Phoenix Chamber and our partners, this is one of the most important, I think, assets that we have in Arizona. So this is very important for us as well. The format tonight is going to consist of opening statements from the candidates, including statements from uncontested races. Then we'll direct questions to candidates for contested seats. You'll have the opportunity to ask some questions of the candidates. You've been provided index cards on your seats, along with some pencils. So if you have a question, write it on the card, and we have a tremendous team who will come around and get those, and we'll try and get to as many as we can tonight. Before we do begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors that have made this evening possible. Our sponsors are Rio Salado Community College, South Mountain Community College, and the Friends of Public Radio. Let's give them a round of applause. We also have some special guests who have joined us here today, and I'd like to just take a moment to recognize our guests. We have members of the Maricopa Community College District Chancellor's Advisory Council. We have the President of South Mountain Community College, Dr. Sherry Olson. Members of Dr. Olson's Community Advisory Council and Business Roundtable. The President of the Rio Salado College, Dr. Chris Bustamante. Members of Dr. Bustamante's Advisory Council. Board members of the Friends of Public Radio, as well as board members from the Sun Sounds Foundation. We also have Dr. Jim Paluzzi, the General Manager of KJZZ and KBOC, as well as the former President of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, since we are in Tempe, Marianne Miller, and the incoming President of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, Ann Gill. So please help me welcome our guests. Next, we'll give each of the governing board candidates 3 minutes or less to make their opening statements. As a reminder, you have pencils and cards available to you. As you think of questions, jot them down, and we'll make every attempt to make sure that we answer all those questions. We're going to begin tonight with the president of the governing board, his 3 minutes. So please welcome Mr. Alfredo Gutierrez. I have upgraded you to doctor.
Thank you all very, very much. I have 3 minutes to explain to you the history of the community colleges. But frankly, you don't want to hear that. It's boring. What you want to hear, and what I want to share with you, is the following. We're at an existential moment in the life of the colleges, and you should think about it that way. We came very close to having a deeply, deeply divided board. It's divided along ideological grounds, different visions of what the future should be about. And it's divided at the time that we're facing extraordinary challenges. At the time that I left the legislature, the budget was based, the community college's budget across the state was based, 1/3 being provided by the state, 1/3 by local taxation, 1/3 by tuition. Today, the state's contribution is 0. And the legislature has gone even further. They have written us out of the statute. They have washed their hands of the colleges. Now ask yourself, what have they washed their hands of? 200,000+ students today. That's what they washed their hands of. Their aspirations, their dreams. 100,000+ people who've come back into college to improve their lives, seeking the middle class, the workforce certification. That's what they've abandoned. And so this decision of who is going to sit on this board, which worldview is going to have the majority, of who's going to fight for more funds for the colleges, who's going to fight so that these colleges not only survive, Mediocrity should not be our option. Not only survive, but thrive and grow and embrace the hundreds of thousands, the millions of students that are coming to us in this coming generation. That's what we have to do. And we have to persuade the larger community. We have to persuade the business community that this is an investment that they must make. So I want to thank you for being here. I want you to listen carefully to the contested candidates. I think that worldview will be very clear to you. And then I hope that you go out and work very, very hard to get a board that believes in the future elected. Thank you.
Dr. Gutierrez, thank you very much. Next, we will hear from District 2, Mr. Danesar.
Well, thank you all. It's tough to follow him, just so you know. I could pile on to what he said because everything is so important as to our future in terms of this election, in terms of our economy here in Arizona. What I'd like to talk about is what is the mission of this organization, and it's quite simply in 2 words: student success, because that provides everything that this county needs, that the state needs when it comes to workforce, when it comes to an economy that's based on educated citizenship. We are the main source of workforce in this state, not just in Maricopa County. But we look at success with 4 different outcomes. The first is the ability to transfer our students into the 4-year universities, and we are a poster child nationally for what we're doing. Our students can go 2 years and sometimes 3 years here at our tuition levels and transfer with all those credits directly to ASU, NAU, and University of Arizona. And history has proven in the last several years that those students that come through our system do better than those who started at ASU. We like to say that. Michael Crow might disagree with that, but it is true. The second one is our ability to provide that workforce. We provide more workforce than any other source in Maricopa County, and it's an area that we know we've got to do better at because we have a shortage of trained workforce here in Maricopa County. The third is developmental education. Some people call it remedial education. We know that half of our students come to us with the need to have some additional help to get up to speed in at least one subject area. The average age of our students is 27 years old. I'm going to guess that if those of you in the audience here took our math placement test, you might find out what developmental education really consists. The fourth item is just as important as the other 3, is our ability to prepare our students for the world economy. It's going to happen. Our students from the K-12 world and ours have traveled a lot compared to what my generation did. Now, we have people in the audience who travel a lot now, but they waited a long time to do so. But it is important that we prepare students not only academically, but socially, spiritually, and other elements of life that are so important to be successful in today's world. So those 4 things are what we focus on. We've got a new chancellor. We've got a new vision that we're putting together in terms of our strategic planning process. So we look forward to the next several years. Being uncontested, I can look forward to those tonight. And I applaud all those who are running for these positions because, as Mr. Gutierrez said, this is such an important aspect of Maricopa County. So thank you for being here, and please go out and vote on November 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Saar. Next, what we'll do is we're going to invite the contested candidates to come up one at a time. So what we'll do is first we'll invite Linda Thor, please, and 3 minutes of remarks.
Thank you, Todd. And I would like to begin by thanking Rio Salado College, South Mountain Community College, and the Friends of Public Radio for sponsoring this forum tonight. I can sum up for you who I am in 6 words. I am a community college lover. I spent 41 years of my career working in the community colleges, and for 29 of those years, I was a college president or a chancellor. I started my career with the Los Angeles Community College District shortly after I graduated with my bachelor's degree in journalism. I was fortunate to have had 5 promotions in the first 12 years I worked for the college district, taking me from an entry-level position to president of West Los Angeles College. The smartest decision of my career was made in 1990 when I moved my young family from Los Angeles here to Phoenix to become the president of Rio Salado College. So I'm home again in this building. I was fortunate to be president of Rio Salado for almost 20 years. In 2010, I left to become the chancellor of the Foothill De Anza Community College District, which serves the Silicon Valley of California. I retired from there in the summer of 2015 and returned to our home here in Phoenix. We had maintained our home because we always knew that we would come back. As I mentioned, I have a bachelor's degree in journalism. My master's degree is in public administration, and my doctorate is in community college administration. So I've served the community colleges for 41 years. I would like to add 4 more years to that and make it 45. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thor. Next, we're going to invite from District 1, Mr. Dennis Kavanaugh. Please welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you very much. I have not been involved in community college for the last 41 years, but I've lived in Arizona for 41 years, and all of those 41 years have been in District 1. And I guess I've been a student of politics all my life. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, went to St. Louis University, political science major, interned at the Missouri legislature, which was an interesting place even back then. But I had the lure of coming to Arizona State, and I'd never been west of central Missouri, so it was a shock to me when I arrived here at about 112 degrees at the end of July 1975 in a dust storm. And yet I've come to love Arizona because of the opportunities that it provides for those who grew up here or those who moved here. I was very fortunate to work as a law clerk at the Arizona legislature and then ultimately get a job as an attorney with the Arizona Legislative Council, where I got to observe Mr. Gutierrez work in a very collegial way to advance public policy in Arizona. And leaders like Mr. Gutierrez, Stan Turley, other folks were really my mentors in public service. And I worked for the state of Arizona for 10 years, first with Legislative Council and then at the Industrial Commission of Arizona, where I was chief counsel. I helped work on public policy issues affecting worker safety, things like that. I am a lawyer, don't hold it against me. I went into private practice in 1988. I've had my own firm since 1990 in Mesa, where my practice focuses on working with injured and disabled people to qualify them for Social Security, disability, or worker compensation. So I've been in business, small business person for all that time, member of my chamber all that time, been engaged. I felt that workers' rights need to be at the table on public policy issues. I ran for the city council in Mesa in 1996. We were at large back then. No one from my part of the city had ever gotten elected to the city council. And it was 10 people running for 3 spots, and it was a very interesting, challenging time. But I managed to get elected because I stitched together a patchwork quilt of advocates from the arts community, neighborhoods, law enforcement, firefighters, and ultimately got elected. I helped us move into a district system where I got reelected 3 more times. There's no one in Mesa history who's been elected more times to the city council than me. I was 6 feet tall when I started, and now I kind of work my way down. But I am in my second term as vice mayor for the city. And so I understand how policy and governance works. The governing board here is very much like a city council working with the city manager. And I have a tremendous amount of experience in working in a nonpartisan role. I am a registered independent. I've always put party politics out in the parking lot when working on issues for the city, and the same really should hold true here at the governing board. But I've had the ability to serve on local, regional, state, and national boards really over the past 20 years. And much of that has been involved with higher education issues. I've worked for 20 years with Mesa Community College and many other institutions here in Mesa. So I do think I'm a champion for higher education. I look forward to serving on the governing board and appreciate your support. Thank you.
And finally, from District 1, Mr. Moses Sanchez.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank all the sponsors for hosting this event. I want to thank all the folks who are live streaming, watching this event, and for those folks at home. My name is Moses Sanchez. I have 3 amazing kids. They told me to say that. And I have 3 even more amazing grandchildren. Now, I was fortunate in 2012 to be elected to the Tempe Union High School District Governing Board. I got elected shortly after my tour in Afghanistan, 2011. I am in the Navy, and I know, people ask me, what's the Navy doing in Afghanistan? There's no ocean there, okay? But I did my time, and here I'm home. And being home, I've served for the last 16 years, 5 more to go, I'm not done, right? Proudly, I'm a patriot. You have to understand, being elected to the Tempe Union High School District was a dream. I know a lot of people say, oh, this is a thankless job. It's non-forgiving. I've had the pleasure being on the board. It's been tough. There's not a vote that you don't take where you won't have people who disagree with you. But I was fortunate to give my daughter her high school diploma when she graduated in 2013. And in 2015, I was the governing board president. So not only did I give my son his high school diploma, but I was able to sign it. That was a dream. We've had a great time as a family, and both of my kids have graduated from the school district, and it's time for me to move on. And I decided that being passionate about community colleges, that this would be the right step. Why am I passionate? I am a teacher. I'm a teacher at South Mountain Community College. I've been a teacher there for the last 7 years, going on 8 years. I love South Mountain, Dr. Olson, South Mountain rocks, go Cougars. Very passionate about education, passionate about our community. I was a fighter and a champion on the Classrooms First initiative in 2015. Earlier this year, I gave input and was part of the team that helped pass Proposition 123. You want to talk about a fighter? You got a fighter right here and a champion for education. I fought both at the state level and in our community. I will continue to fight for funding and for education here in our community and for the community colleges. I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Moses, thank you for your service to our country, and to all our candidates who are here tonight, thank you for being here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I got a really easy question, so this is good news for us. So why are you running for the board? And why don't we start in the middle? Mr. Kavanaugh, would you like to take that?
I'm running for the board because through my time, the last 20 years, I've worked very closely with Mesa Community College, served on its Commission on Excellence, served as its chair, served on its development committee, and I've been aware of a lot of the changes that have occurred both on the state level as well as the issues that the governing board really has had over the last 10 years. It's been some rocky times. And in leaving council, I looked to an opportunity where I could bring my experience to bear as a consensus builder, a problem solver, and also, again, from my time serving on city council, the community colleges are one of the most important assets that my community's had in luring new businesses to our city and in attracting the new colleges and universities that we have located here to Arizona, to Mesa, within the last 5 years. And so I understand the role and the importance, and I think that the board, as we've heard earlier, is at a crossroads, and I think that I can help move it in a positive direction.
Thank you. Ms. Dorr, would you like to take the next one?
I'm running for the board because the Maricopa Community Colleges are one of the premier community college districts of this country, and I want to see it stay that way. I also know from personal experience that these colleges change people's lives, and student success is my priority. I want to draw on nearly 3 decades as a chief executive officer to ensure that we have reasonable and rational policies, that we do smart, budgeting, and when necessary, smart cost cutting. And I will advocate for these colleges in the community and down at the legislature. These colleges are critical to the economic well-being of not only Maricopa County, but really all of Arizona. And I want to be able to promote and support quality, affordable, accessible career and technical education that meets the needs both of employers and of workers.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
I already stated how passionate I am about community colleges, but I got my start in a community college. After being active duty in the service, I went straight into community college. But it wasn't just me, it was my wife. Now you have to understand, my wife is an interesting case. My wife is currently the interim associate dean of the University of Arizona College of Medicine right here in downtown. But what makes her special is my wife is a high school dropout, Latina. High school dropout, teenage mom. You know where she got her start? Mesa Community College. Community colleges are important to us. And unfortunately, I believe that we don't have enough people championing them. We don't have enough people, we have alumni and alumni groups, and you hear, oh, go Sun Devils or go Wildcats. We're the Go Cougars. We're the different, I mean, we have to champion these schools. And I'm a champion and an advocate of these schools. My daughter went to Rio Salado while she was in high school. And she's now a senior at ASU about to graduate. My son is at Mesa Community College. Why am I running? I'm running for my kids, I'm running for our community, and I'm running for the community colleges.
Let's stay with you, Mr. Sanchez, real quickly. And you know, I think everybody here kind of wants to know what you're bringing to the table. And all of our candidates here are bringing something different. I think we all have passion for the role, but give me three things that your background and experience in your background and experience that you're bringing to this role.
The Tempe Union High School District is, in my opinion, the finest high school district in the state of Arizona. Granted, I'm a little biased, being on the board. We've accomplished a lot of things on this district, whether it was increasing student achievement, and not just increasing student achievement in Ahwatukee, okay, that maybe is not as diverse, but increasing student achievement in schools like Mountain Point High School. Mountain Point High School has a 48%, this year, 48% out-of-district enrollment. Still increases in student achievement every single year. Okay? We have the finest high schools, and you know what? The things that we did there, whether it was increase in student achievement, optimization of resources, whether it was highly diversified and qualified staff, or nurturing positive relationships with the business community and the communities that they mean to represent. These are things that we were able to accomplish while I was at Tempe Union High School District. These are experiences that I mean to take, successes that I mean to take, and to bring to this board and share my experiences. That's one of the main things that I can bring to this board, is that experience of positive growth. Bring it to the community college.
Thank you. Storr, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you, Todd. As I indicated, I have over 40 years' experience working in the community colleges, and specifically 20 years being a chief executive officer right here in the Maricopa Community Colleges. So my learning curve is not going to be very steep. I should be able to hit the ground running in support of these colleges. Secondly, while I was president of Rio Salado, I was very active in the community and served on many boards. And I will be able to leverage those connections throughout the county to form partnerships that will benefit all of our colleges. And finally, I served as a chancellor for 5.5 years, reporting directly to a governing board. And that was a wonderful experience for me in learning what the governing board needs from the chancellor in order to make good decisions, but also what the chancellor needs from the governing board in order to be an excellent chief executive officer.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Well, I bring to the table governance experience in running $2 billion entities. For the last 6 years, I've been on the board of Valley Metro, all our entire county metro system. Either been chair or vice chair for 6 years. That hasn't been an easy job, as you know from headlines. For 16.5 years, again, I've helped govern the city of Mesa, a billion-dollar enterprise with thousands of employees through bad times and good times. And we've had to do it in very creative ways. So that experience in governance is really important. The second thing I would say is that I have a very strong talent for building consensus. And one example, over the last 8 years on the Mesa City Council, we're a very diverse council, believe me. Every major policy decision that we have made in the last 8 years has been arrived at by unanimous vote. It may take us a little longer, but we don't behave like the legislature does today or Congress. We talk to each other, and we're able to arrive at those things. And so, and being the old guy on council, again, I think I've helped play a pivotal role in bringing that consensus. The final thing is, I know about advocacy. And advocacy is an important element, I think, of every governing board. I have experience in that my service on the National League of Cities Board of Directors working to advocate on the federal level on issues important to American cities. Here in the state of Arizona, I was chair of the Arizona Commission on the Arts during some very difficult times. I think there's still a recording of me battling with Russell Pierce on funding for the Commission on the Arts. And we were able to put together a coalition to save that funding. And then finally, advocacy issues in terms of policy issues, either both for my community or the region. I have experience and I know how to do that in a very positive way.
Thank you. Going back to Ms. Thor, so President Gutierrez talked about the legislature cutting funding or basically taking them out of statute, which is correct for the community colleges. One thing that occurred last year, the business community pushed through a bill with community colleges to allow them to partner with the business community in terms of workforce. Really important thing. Can you give us some ideas of how you'd want to leverage this opportunity?
For workforce?
Yes.
Oh, I love that question. I failed to mention that the job that I had just prior to being president of West Los Angeles College was Senior Director of Occupational and Technical Education for the Los Angeles Community College District. And in that role, I had the opportunity to establish for the 9-college LA district their employment training program, their contract training program back in the early 80s. I was delighted when I came to Rio Salado College to have the opportunity to develop educational services partnerships that really had the community college playing the role of the corporate university for major employers in Maricopa County. But as you said, we were limited in our ability to really grow public-private partnerships by the expenditure limitation. So I applaud the business community and the district in successfully passing that legislation because there certainly are wonderful opportunities to grow customized training programs to meet the needs of employers and employees alike.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, would you like to take that?
Yeah, no, this is something that I've heard very frequently from companies either who are located in Mesa or coming in Mesa is, can we work with the community colleges? We need programs, we need the colleges to be nimble. And I think the legislation last year does expand that potential. And it's really important, not only at the community college level, but even below at the East Valley Institute of Technology, which I've represented for many years. We've worked out partnerships between the city of Mesa, the district, and the private sector in such areas as auto mechanics, welding, firefighting, bringing in the city resources, private resources with the school resources, which really is getting those kids in the right direction. I'm very proud of that. But that same course should continue on as we move into the community college area. We shouldn't be afraid of private partnerships or working with businesses, and I think we have to be able to try to respond quickly because workplaces today are very different and the needs change almost daily.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
The first thing I did when I got elected in 2013 is I went down to the state capitol that year, and I championed and I fought for CTE dollars. We didn't get it. Okay? I fought again, and I fought every single year for those CTE dollars. Workforce development and partnerships with the community, critical. And it's something that we do really well at the Tempe Union High School District. Just the other week, I asked my students, at South Mountain Community College. What's the one thing you would like more of? This is from the students in the classroom. You know what they said? We'd like more internships. We don't have enough internships. According to the students, they want more internships, more bridges. They want more relationships with local companies. And I believe that extending that hand out there, working with the local chambers, we've done an amazing job with the Ahwatukee Chamber, with the Chandler Chamber, and with the Tempe Chamber in our school district. I believe that doing that at the community college level is critical. It's not just criticizing folks, okay? It's building those bridges, those relationships. That is so important for workforce development.
Excellent, thank you. Let's talk about challenges and opportunities. Maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Biggest challenge, biggest opportunities for the community college system as you see it?
I think the biggest challenge really is the lack of state funding. And that is it's critical, it's unconscionable what has happened for us to disinvest in Pima and Maricopa County. And so I believe it also creates an opportunity. It's energized the business community, the labor community, the education community, unlike anything I've ever seen. It's energized cities and towns across Maricopa County to come together in an alliance to work towards restoring funding at the legislature. And so, you know, what is a tragedy, I think, has engaged all sectors of our economy to understand the significance of that. And so I think the opportunity is for us to go back and make a very strong push to restore our historic balance of funding.
Just quickly, given your tenure at the legislature, with a box of a surplus of 24 million perhaps this year, how does that even happen?
Well, I think the surplus is going to be even more than that. I mean, historically, the JLBC and the governor's office underreports surplus. And there are a lot of opportunities for tax credits and tax deductions, tax loopholes that the legislature has created over the past 20 years that could be closed, that could be reformed, or maybe a simple thing like bringing auditors back to the Arizona Department of Revenue. That's really important, you know, from the cities, because we got told, oh, the state's you can't do your auditing anymore, city of Mesa, and now the state's getting rid of its auditors. So I think there's some simple things we could do.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez, biggest
Yes.
challenges, biggest opportunity.
Biggest challenge, obviously, is funding. Funding is the biggest challenge that's out there. I agree with Mr. Kavanaugh on that. I'm a small business owner, and I got my MBA, SWOT analysis. Sometimes our biggest challenges are our biggest opportunities. And having that funding problem makes us think outside the box to come up with solutions that we probably wouldn't have thought of before. I'm not an advocate for keeping funding at the current level, which is zero. I'm an advocate for more funding. But the opportunity I see is that education is top of mind right now. It really is. You saw that with Prop 123. You saw that with the record numbers of voters going out for a special election. Education is top of mind. You see it at the K-12 level. Again, I was fortunate in the Tempe Union High School District, we were able to pass bonds and overrides in our district. Unfortunately, not all districts were able to do that. Biggest opportunity, education's top of mind. We can champion education. We can talk more about our community colleges. We can talk more about workforce development. A lot of people don't realize that we are such a great employer, or such a great, pipeline. See? I love this, audience participation, like my classroom. But yeah, no, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I think the more we talk about that, the more I talk about that at events, people go, I didn't know that. So those are my opinion, the biggest challenges and opportunities.
Excellent. Store, please.
Well, I certainly would agree that funding is a great challenge. So let me comment about another big challenge. And that is that we've got to reverse the declining enrollment that the district has been experiencing for a number of years now. Now, you probably can make a connection between the loss of funding and declining enrollment. But I also think the district needs to look at how well it is serving all segments of the population. And where there may be gaps, look at how we can fill those gaps. And also implement and in many cases expand best practices when it comes to delivery of instruction to students, whether it's through traditional delivery or online or hybrid or academies or boot camps or competency-based education, and also to look at innovative ways to deliver services to students. And as for opportunity, I would like to see us reinvigorate the spirit of innovation that made these colleges among the most respected, not only locally, but also nationally. These colleges are capable of doing incredible things, and we need to give them the encouragement to take risks, to try new things, and to learn from each other and from the rest of the community college system nationally.
Thank you. Everyone here identified funding, so we're going to do a little mini lightning round, yes, no. Would you, if elected, would you ask or petition the legislature and the governor to restore funding? I'll start with you, Ms. Thor. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Mr. Kavanaugh?
Certainly.
Mr. Sanchez?
Absolutely.
Okay, here first. So, okay, so let's stay on the topic of financing and funding. In your role as a board member, you could be asked to raise tuition, obviously unpopular among students, and raise property taxes, the third rail of Arizona politics. Please share your thoughts about tuition and taxes as it relates to the current funding model. And I'll start with Mr. Sanchez.
I'm not an advocate of raising tuition. Again, I believe that we should find other ways, other methods. There's so many outside the box thinking that I've experienced at the current school district, and I can't tell you before I got there as a education advocate, as a person who used to sit in the audience and going, oh, we could just do this or we could just do that. When I got there, I actually saw what we can and can't do. And many of the things that I saw that we could do were impressive. A lot of ways to think outside the box and shift dollars here. And the whole optimization model that we use there is something that I believe we could use here in order to not increase tuition. When I went to the community college, it was $13 a credit. And I was furious when they raised it from 11 to 13. I can't imagine. I've been teaching when it was $81. Now it's 86. I'm not going to tell my students that I'm going to support raising that tuition when there's other methods, in my opinion.
Would you care to comment on taxes?
Taxes. When it comes to overrides or bonds, it's one of those things where I think to support an override or support a bond, you need to have all the information. I have supported overrides in my district. Not only did I support the overrides in my district, I was on a television commercial looping nonstop. I was the only governing board member doing so in Tempe in 2013, 2014. So there are some times where you have to advocate for that, and then there are some times where you can't support overrides and bonds, depending on what they're looking for. I believe that you need to make sure you get all the details there, get all the information, and then make that decision. So that's where I stand on the taxes and overrides.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Well, unlike one of my opponents who's not here tonight, I don't advocate a slogan of lower taxes and lower tuition. I mean, who's going to be against that? But I think you, as a governing board member, you have to be willing to make hard decisions on things like tuition, taxes, smart spending. Again, I've had to work through very difficult situations in the city of Mesa where we didn't have enough revenue. We had to be innovative. We gave a lot of authority and enabling of our departments to figure out how to do it smarter with less money and fewer people. And we achieved that through a variety of different ways. You can do that as an elected official. I think it's foolish to say, as an elected official, I will never raise taxes or I'll never raise tuition, because that may be a tool you need to use. But if you're going to use it, you have to be as transparent as possible. You have to be able to tell your constituents, here's what you're going to get for it. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what you're going to get. And you have to deliver on that, because that's how you build and maintain credibility with the voters in your district.
Thank you. Ms. Thorpe?
Raising tuition or raising taxes would weigh very heavily on me as a board member. I would first want to hold the legislature responsible for disinvesting in the workforce of higher education. I also would encourage the colleges to be as entrepreneurial as possible and to seek alternative revenue. I also would support the use of technology and other systemic interventions that allow the colleges to be more efficient and more cost-effective. If presented with a proposal to increase tuition or increase property taxes, I would want to have a thorough analysis of why that is necessary. However, if faced with diminishing the quality of the programs or the services to our students, then I would support such increases.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have some great questions from the audience. This is to all of our candidates. What's your perspective on allowing the Maricopa Community Colleges to offer four-year degrees? Well, I think we have a winner here.
Oh, I really love that question. Some of the folks in the audience may not realize that back in 1996, this district, and primarily Rio Salado College, along with Yavapai College, made an attempt to get authorization to offer applied baccalaureate degrees in the community colleges. Had that been approved, we would have been one of the first states in the nation to give our colleges that authority. Unfortunately, instead, we had World War III, and we were not successful with the initiative. Since that time, 22 other states have now given community colleges that authority. And they're now able to offer individuals in their community workforce-based degrees for as low as $10,000 for all 4 years. So we're talking about degrees that are not duplicative of what the universities are offering, but degrees that are not currently offered by the universities, but do have demand in the workplace. Arizona is now surrounded by states that authorize community colleges to offer baccalaureate degrees, and I think it's time for us to try again.
Thank you. Anybody else like Mr. Cowan or Dick Dunn?
Yeah, I would certainly tell you that if we were able to do this, it would help our economic development efforts tremendously. I think that we've had a time to observe what the other states have done, how they've been able to achieve collegiality with the other educational institutions, that it can be done without World War III. And I think it really creates the element of choice, which all of us should be looking towards. Choice was one of the reasons I helped get 5 new colleges and universities come to my city. And we've got people coming from all over the country saying, how did you do that? But we wanted to create choices. And those colleges came because of the quality of Maricopa colleges. But what we really see a tremendous need for is, I think, four-year colleges, four-year certificates, degrees in workforce housing. We can do it without engaging those who want to get the billions of dollars of research and all that other stuff. You know, we can learn from others' travails, and I think we can do it right. We can do it smart here.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez, thoughts?
I couldn't agree more with Dr. Thor. I do believe that I would accept it. I would advocate for it, especially in certain fields. I love this question because I did ask my wife this question, and she was talking about nursing. You want to talk about nurses, right? She believed that she got a better education getting her associate's nursing at Mesa than she did when she graduated ASU with her nursing. And so that there are some fields at the community colleges do an absolutely better job than the higher universities. So I would advocate for four-year degrees, certain four-year degrees in certain fields.
Okay, thank you. We have another great question, and maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Sanchez. ABOR has 2 student seats allocated. Would you consider student representation for the board?
Would I consider it? I would need to know. That's a great question. I would need to know more information about that before I jumped into that one.
Okay, Mr. Kavanaugh, your thoughts?
I think it's an idea that's worth considering. A friend of mine, Ed Hermes, served as on the Board of Regents as one of the representatives there, and I think brought a good perspective to the deliberations for the Board of Regents. I don't see why we would be afraid of it or trying it. I think it's another example of engagement with our constituency.
Thank you.
Many community college districts across the country do have student trustees. And when I was chancellor of the Foothill De Anza Community College District, we did have a student trustee from both De Anza College and from Foothill College. They are advisory in their vote. Their vote is not binding, but they do bring the student perspective to the board. And as important as that, they also accompanied us when we went to visit legislators. And the administrators didn't need to talk when student trustees were with us because the legislators listened very carefully to what they had to say. So I think, with appropriate restrictions on their access to confidential information and so on, that student trustees would enrich a board.
Okay. Another question we have is sort of a two-part question. First is, do you agree with the current faculty to adjunct ratio? And then the second question is, would you consider a pay raise for adjunct faculty? And the example here is this person is an adjunct at ASU and makes $4,100 per class, and at the Maricopa Community College, it's $2,500. So 2 parts. Who would like to start? Would you like to start, Mr. Kavanaugh? You're nodding.
Well, no, I think the raise is warranted. I have friends who teach at both and have told me of the challenges in terms of the pay. Our adjunct faculty does great work. We draw people from many different disciplines who do great work, and I think that is important to keep and retain them. Yeah, in terms of the ratio, again, I guess I don't have enough information on whether the ratio should be changed or not, but I certainly think in terms of the wage compensation issue, that's appropriate to look at.
I'm not opposed to the ratio increasing. I really believe that when it comes to adjunct, we have a huge pool of business personnel throughout our district, throughout our valley that we can tap into. When it comes to pay raise, I'm a teacher. Oh, yeah. That's all I got.
All right. Ms. Thor.
Adjunct faculty members are extremely important to the quality of the education that the community colleges provide because they do bring a practitioner's perspective to the classroom. Adjunct faculty here, as well as across the nation, are grossly underfunded. And that needs to be addressed while we also address the overall funding issue. As to the ratio of full-time to part-time faculty, certainly a college here like Rio Salado was built on a model of adjunct faculty, and that is appropriate to its mission. For more traditional colleges, you do need a good balance, and the more full-time faculty you have at those institutions, generally the stronger the engagement and the shared governance that those colleges enjoy.
Okay, wonderful. Another question we have relates to diversity, an important topic for all of us. And the question is, how will you help to increase and give aid to our Native American, Asian, LGBT, Latino, vets, the disabled? What are you going to do on that front to make sure that this is an open and accessible place for all of those folks? And Ms. Thor, if you went last, would you like to start?
The diversity of the community colleges is one of its great strengths. But as I mentioned earlier, I do think it would be good for the district to do some research on how well it is serving all aspects of the community. And if gaps are identified, to look at ways in which we can ensure equal participation equity and success for all aspects of the community. The colleges already have some fabulous programs around Hoops of Learning for the Native American programs, and Puente, and other programs aimed at the minority male initiatives. But again, these are all funding issues. I'd love to see those programs expanded to serve more students, and for us to work with the community and with the Maricopa Community Colleges Foundation to ensure that we've got the funding to provide those programs that do make a difference in whether a student stays enrolled, stays engaged, and succeeds.
Thank you. Mr. Scavo?
I think the college really has a very positive program for supporting diversity. I know years ago there were some very interesting board discussions about this, and I think the board has moved in the right direction to supporting the nature of where we live and who we are. I think the governing board needs to set the tone for that, being positive advocates for how we serve diversity in our community. But we also, as Dr. Thor said, we need to make sure we survey our community. And just a quick example, the city did a survey of residents in our community, our Human Relations Advisory Board, and we were shocked that the biggest issues we had on diversity were problems of people with special needs and veterans. We didn't think that would be the case. And so our assumptions were incorrect. And so I think that's something that's a very good suggestion. We can't rely on old assumptions without current validation.
Sanchez?
Diversity is important for a lot of reasons. First, a lot of people don't realize I'm not first generation, I'm not second generation. I'm an immigrant. English is my second language. Okay? Spanish is my first language. Chinese is my third language. Okay? Diversity is critical. Often your students, our students, will look at the instructor who's instructing them for inspiration. And that inspiration can take these students far. In the Tempe Union High School District, we always strive to maintain and to increase our diversity in not just our staff, but the administration level and in all facets of the school district. So diversity is critical. I think reaching out to these communities and keeping them involved and sharing with them how or what the process is for them to get involved in our school district. You'd be surprised how many people will take that step if you just ask them.
Thank you. So best practices dictate that there's a fine line between governing and moving into the role of the chancellor and the administration's role. How would you balance your role as a governing board member in terms of the process and the work that's being done by the chancellor and the governing folks?
That's experience. Experience has taught me that. I've witnessed that at the school district, working with the superintendent. Okay? I know what my role is as a governing board member, and I respect his role at our district. And I understand what our roles are. And I don't cross that line. I'm not a micromanager, never have been, but I do hold the superintendent accountable. I make sure that the constituents and the people who I represent, that their voice is heard, not just in a public forum during our meetings, but also in personal meetings with the superintendent. I do not cross the line. I do not go onto campuses and tell people how to do their job. I really respect that. Never been a micromanager, refuse to do that. As a teacher, I wouldn't appreciate that. But experience has taught me the relationship between the board and the chancellor or superintendent is important. Respect that, and the district can go far.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh?
I learned the answer to that question my very first day on city council about 20 years ago, because city council is very similar to a governing board that I had to work through the city manager. I couldn't tell city employees what to do or not to do, but I could ask questions. I could request information, and I could propose ordinances. I could propose new laws, new policies, and gain support for them. But I quickly learned it wasn't my role to go to a department head to say, you need to put this in your budget or take this out of your budget. or show up at a department manager's office and start berating them about the sign in front or the paving the parking lot. And we need to avoid that kind of meddling and interference, because that is not the role of a policy and governance board. We do have to hold the people that we hire accountable to us, and not be lax on oversight of what those people do, and make sure that they follow the policies that we enact. But it's something that that it's critical, really, for everyone who serves on a board, whether it's a nonprofit or a public entity, to understand the role of board members, board chair, and as well as working with staff.
I have worked with governing boards for 40 years, and some of them have been really good, and some of them have been quite dysfunctional. The primary responsibility of the governing board is to set policy, and governing boards that choose instead to micromanage find themselves in great difficulty with accrediting commissions. The most important job of the governing board is hiring, evaluating, and guiding the chancellor. And the work of the colleges takes place from the chancellor down, not from the board down. I also recognize that the board has a responsibility to maintain communication with the community and articulate the interests and the concerns of the community back to the board and to the chancellor, and at the same time represent the colleges out to the community, but not to run the colleges.
Thank you. Earlier in Mr. Kavanaugh's comments, he mentioned the fact that they're in Mesa did a lot of work with private institutions. So I'll start with you, Ms. Thor. So obviously the community colleges do a lot with the state schools appropriately. Should there be a connection? Should there be some sort of relationship between the community college system and private institutions?
There should be, and there already is. Certainly the vast majority of graduates of the Maricopa Community Colleges attend one of the three public universities, but through our articulation efforts, we also provide pathways for them to attend both private or independent universities, as well as some of the for-profit universities. So as Mr. Kavanaugh mentioned earlier, we're about providing choices for our students, and we want to provide the kind of information that allows our students to make good choices.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh, would you like to?
I do. That was one of the keys for the new colleges and universities coming to Mesa was, would Maricopa colleges be welcoming to them? And they are. They have been. I serve on the advisory board right now for Benedictine University, which has articulation agreements with the Maricopa colleges, and it's a great example, again, of providing choices for students, and it's a great model. I'm hoping that we do get more small private colleges come to Arizona, which is the model in much of the rest of the country, again, to provide a variety of choices for people. But the reason they will come, I will tell you, would be the strength of the Maricopa College system. That is recognized nationally. And all 5 schools that we worked with, that was the first thing out of their mouth. We want to work with them. Can we work with them? Yes, they will.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez?
I have to agree with both of the speakers. I have students all the time, students that go to Benedictine, students that head off to GCU. I love the Pathways program that we currently have. It's not something that we had when I first started, or at least something that was advocated when I first started. In my class right now, we have one student who's currently on the program who was talking about it just this morning to other students. So I think we need to do a better job of promoting that. But I do support choice. I like the idea of having more options. And so I would agree with both of the speakers.
Okay. So earlier we talked a little bit about the legislature. Let's go back to that a little bit. The legislature obviously is an important factor, like them or not. Clearly there is a funding question, but there are also some opportunities that we've got in terms of moving the agenda forward. So let's talk about bridges. How would you build bridges with the legislature and with perhaps people that might be politically opposite of where you are to make sure that we can start to look at that funding, we can start to look at opportunities like the public-private partnerships. And I'll start with you, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Well, I think the real key is to convey the message to legislators. It's really very simple. Community colleges are about careers, jobs, and training. And they're about students of all ages. And that if you, as a legislature, if you're serious about businesses coming and growing in Arizona, there have to be strong educational components at grade school, high school, community college, and the college level. And I think we have the opportunity now with kind of an engaged populace on this issue that we've seen, interestingly enough, candidate after candidate in the current legislative process suddenly embracing education. And I'm not criticizing them for being latecomers. We welcome them to the table. But I think it's the coalition that we've seen from communities that helps to bridge that gap.
They seem to have found religion lately on
They
education.
did, yes.
I would agree. Mr. Sanchez?
My wife always tells me when it comes to communication and partnerships, tone matters. Okay? Tone matters. And I think that's important. Sometimes we lose that tone in the messaging when we're trying to fight for these dollars, when we're trying to build these relationships. It's easy to lose that tone, and next thing you know, you have an enemy, not a friend. I may not agree with many people 90% of the time, but we need to find a place, and there is a place where we do agree on and advocate for those areas, whether it's economics, whether it's better economy, whether it's a list of positive things that our community colleges do. We can talk about those and focus on those, and tone does matter.
Thank you. Sir.
And I would agree with both of the other candidates. It's not only about finding common ground, but I think we need to do a better job in educating the legislators about the impact of community colleges, and not just about the number of students that we're serving and their success rate, but the economic impact of these colleges on the community. Maricopa did an economic impact study in 2015, I believe, that indicated that for every single taxpayer dollar invested in the Maricopa colleges, $4.20 returns to the economy. And I think it's important that we have elected officials talking to elected officials, and that governing board members need to play a major role in talking to the legislatures, not just delegating it to hired or contract lobbyists.
Thank you. So workforce, big issue. We've talked about that a little bit tonight. One of the biggest issues that we're seeing from employers is not necessarily the pipeline. They're excited that there's a pipeline, but a lot of times they need 50 people who can pass a Series 7 tomorrow, or at least in the next quarter. I'll tell you, that's a big struggle for us. How do you believe the community college system should be looking at that, and how should they be working with employers to get there? And maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Sanchez.
Best practices. I'm a huge advocate of best practices. I talk about that a lot on the current board. When I say best practices, you know who best to talk to you about the Series 7 and what it takes to pass the Series 7? It's those industries that are in there. Have them communicate with the community colleges and share that knowledge and share that information, building those relationships and those bridges. It's not just a Series 7, it's other certification programs. Bring in those businesses and those industries who know their industry best and what they need best. Bring them into the room, develop that relationship, develop that coalition, and they're willing. They are very much willing because they know we're willing. We have the population, we have the workforce. They're willing to work with our students. But that communication needs to be there. That relationship needs to be there. And I hate to say it, but I don't believe that relationship is fully there. I've had a student in my class once tell me, Mr. Sanchez, I'm a freshman. I want to go into journalism. I filed an application to be an intern at local news stations. They wouldn't take me because they only take ASU students. They wouldn't take the community college student. That's a problem, and we need to fix that.
Thank you. Ms. Orr, would you like to take that?
The community colleges have a multifaceted mission. So, I mean, clearly we provide a pathway to the universities, and that needs to be a set curriculum to do so. And we provide full certificate and degree programs in general ed and community service and continuing ed. What you're talking about is really separate from all of that and should involve different processes and different practices. It's about the colleges or representatives of the colleges listening to employers and what it is that they need rather than bringing them a laundry list of things that we already offer. And those kinds of programs need to be able to be put together very rapidly, be offered for non-credit, be fully paid for by the employer, and be offered and off the books if they're no longer needed. So I wouldn't interfere at all in the traditional programs and processes of the colleges, but also have a vehicle to fast-track short-term non-credit programming.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Dr. Thor. This really is should be a separate track. I've heard from many businesses who said, you know, life as we know it has changed in the employment world because now we may have 5 or 6 different careers, or within one career, the needs are constantly changing. And they know for larger businesses what happens in other states. They will go to other states where the community colleges are nimble enough to respond to them, because really they need a program that is able to be put together quickly with the requirements that that particular industry needs for those workers. And it doesn't need to be treated in the same way as your traditional academic program. It really is a separate process, and it's one where, again, as Mr. Sanchez says, the business community knows what it needs, and it knows what it can get in other places in other states, and we need to listen to that.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from the audience in terms of what are you doing now to support student success, workforce development for MCC CCD students? And why don't we start with you, Mr. Kavanaugh?
What am I doing now? Well, for the last 20 years, I've been part of the Commission on Excellence in Education at Mesa Community College. I've also been on their development committee, helping raise funds for student scholarships and different programs at the college. I was one of the individuals who got a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that came one of 4 cities in the country on what's happening with pathways for students to graduate both from high school and community college and college. And so we helped put together a program called Mesa Counts on College, which has brought together Mesa Community College, Mesa Public Schools, and the city of Mesa to work on that. So those are just a few of the programs I've worked on. In addition, a small one, it's called College Bound. It's a program that mentors students from first-generation families starting in junior high school in terms of what they need to know if they want to go to college or community college, and partners them up with experienced mentors. So I've really kind of worked on those pathways, both from the junior high level on up through the colleges.
Thank you. Storr?
What I'm doing is I'm running for the at-large seat on the governing board of the Maricopa Community Colleges. But in addition to that, I continue to be very active in the community college world and serve as a consultant to the Association of Community College Trustees, as well as a consultant for the League for Innovation in the Community College, specifically in developing future community college presidents, and continue to serve on a variety of boards, including the Community College Baccalaureate Association Board, of which I was a founding member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez.
What am I doing now? I am in the classroom every week. And you want to know one of my favorite things about my class? I teach macro and microeconomics, which most of you would probably yawn at just thinking about it. But in my class, every semester for the last 7 years, I'm a small business owner. And as a small business owner, we manage the marketing, the social media marketing of over 40 companies for years now. As a small business owner, And as a teacher, in a macro and microeconomics class, I bring entrepreneurs to the classroom every semester. As a matter of fact, I have one next Wednesday if you guys want to join us. Okay? A carpet cleaner. You ask the students, would you like to be a carpet cleaner when you grow up? Most of them roll their eyes. Then you say, hey, you know, those of you fighting for $15 an hour, this carpet cleaner makes $80 an hour. And now the students are interested. Entrepreneurs, every single week, I bring financial advisors, I bring real estate agents, I tap into the chambers, I tap into my network, and I bring guest speakers into my class who share their experiences, their struggles, their failures as an entrepreneur, giving the students options. It's not just GDP, national income, unemployment. It's what it takes to be a successful business person.
And we won't go to the 15-hour minimum wage question then. So just quickly, Mr. Saar, I think, hit on something real, and I think maybe this might be our last question, but something important, and that is the fact that about 70% of the kids coming into the system from the K-12 system can't necessarily compete at the 101 level. They have to be remediated. It's a huge issue in terms of cost and resources, and something you can't really control. What should be done about that, or what would you like to do about that? We'll start with you, Mr. Sanchez.
This is something that we witnessed in the Tempe Union High School District. It's a phenomenal school district, but as I stated earlier, we have a school with 48% out-of-district students. And so often we see those freshmen, those incoming freshmen who come from out of the district without the same standards of the students who are coming from Kyrene Elementary or Tempe Elementary. And some of these students are coming from as far as Peoria. The point is, in our district, that first year is critical. That first year and getting extra hours for those students without necessarily making it a negative experience is important. And we've been able to do that in the Tempe Union High School District, managing that outside, the number of students that are coming outside at a lower level. What I find at the community college level, one of the things that we could all do, we're so focused on the community colleges. We're focused on, you hear workforce development. Most of us all know what that means. A lot of folks out there don't know what workforce development means. We champion our community colleges. What we don't talk about enough is that relationship with K through 12. It's reaching out and saying, hey, we need to champion the K through 12 system as well. We need to make sure that the students who are coming in are at that standard. And we really, at the community college level, we don't talk about it. I see students from the Tempe Union High School District in my classroom and students from other school districts in my classroom, and there is a significant difference in the term papers that they turn in the work that they turn in. And I have to work with a lot of these students. And we do the best job that I can do, and often I'm successful, and sometimes I'm not. But championing the K through 12 and talking about that, even at the community college level, is important.
Thank you. Kevin, I would like to take that.
I think the health and quality of life in our community is really judged by the educational levels and attainments that we have, or not. And so what I think we should do is look at the example of the Mesa Canton College program, other similar programs around the country, where leadership is not working in silos, where you bring together your local city government, your local community college, and your local school districts who serve that, everybody at the table to see how we can share what best practice we have, where we're duplicating efforts, because I believe there is a role for cities. We're not school boards like they are in the Midwest and the East, but the educational rate, the graduation rate, the dropout rate is just as important to cities. And so I think that we need to replicate those kind of coalition buildings among the leadership groups within our communities.
Thank you.
60 to 70% of the students who enter the community college need at least one developmental education class. And that's probably not going to change until the state of Arizona adequately funds the K-12 system so that they're able to graduate students who are college ready. So given that reality, the colleges need to continue to look for ways to accelerate students' remediation so that as quickly as possible they can move out of developmental education classes into college credit classes. I also agree that we have to continue to work effectively with the K-12 system. and continue to support and expand the dual enrollment program, which I'm very proud was started here in Arizona when I was president of Rio Salado College.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're getting close to the conclusion. Now, I think we've had a lot of, we've hit a lot of huge policy issues, big questions. We're going to humanize our candidates here for a moment. And these are one-word answers. I promise nothing that will scare you, but we're going to humanize you a little bit. So only one-word answer, and we'll start with you, Mr. Sanchez. Obviously, we love Arizona. This is the best place on earth. But if you couldn't live in Arizona, where would you live? Not Afghanistan. We know
No, no more. I would say the
One-word
Bay
answer.
Area.
Bay Area. Mr. Kavanaugh?
San Diego.
Okay. Store?
Well, I was just in the Bay Area for 5 years, and I came back to Phoenix. So
I don't know if that was one word. All right, ready? We're going to start with you. One word. Cardinals, Diamondbacks, Suns, or Coyotes?
Oh. How about not a sports fan?
We'll tell Derek Hall. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Okay. Your political hero. We'll start with you, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Stan Turley.
All right. Store?
Oh, gosh. Well, there are many. I'd say, Ann Richards.
Ann Richards, Texas. Excellent. Sanchez?
Congressman Richard Pombo,
All
former
right.
congressman
There we
of
go.
the Bay Area.
Okay, this is a tough one. Favorite community college? Careful, we got some college presidents here. We know where you're going. Would you like to start?
South Mountain, go Cougars.
Okay. Kavanaugh?
Mesa, go Thunderbirds.
I have the president of Rio Salado College staring me down at the moment.
He's a teddy bear.
I love all the colleges, but my heart is here at Rio Salado.
Okay, and then now the most important one, and this is you could get a wrong answer here. A Mexican or Italian food? We'll start with you.
Oh, Mexican, absolutely.
That's right. Kavanaugh?
Italian. I'm from St. Louis in the Hill.
Okay, we'll have one small demerit there. Mr. Sanchez?
Mexican food.
All right, well, there you go. You heard it here first. Now we're going to do is we're going to have closing statements, and we're going to go in reverse order. So if we could, Mr. Sanchez, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, first, I'd like to thank all the sponsors, and especially you guys for coming out. I mean, you don't understand. I go to a lot of these events, and I was just at a forum on Monday for the Tempe Union High School District for the folks who are going to replace me, and there weren't very many people in the audience, and it was disheartening. But I was excited about the number of candidates we had. It's a positive thing. It's a positive thing to have candidates. I know that there are school districts in the state of Arizona that have no candidates running for their districts. And that's a shame, and that's sad. And when you talk about championing education and how education matters and what impact education plays in your community, the first step is getting involved. And you can get involved in so many different ways. I was fortunate I got involved with my kids in elementary school at Kyrene, and then again at the high school. It wasn't my idea, it was my daughter's idea, but it turned out to be a blessing. And I've had a great journey at the Tempe Union High School District. I've worked well with all the governing board members that I sat with, and I'm proud and honored that the folks who are running right now at the Tempe Union High School District, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. A lot of them are great candidates, and they're going to do positive things. This campaign, this race, has been challenging for me at times. Many of you may not have known, but my signatures were challenged right off the bat. Dealing with courts, dealing with lawyers and situations like that, it's unfortunate. I mean, we're running for school board here. We're running to champion education. The end state goals should be the same. Our methods and our philosophies may be different, but the goals should be the same, and that's been unfortunate. I've ran into a lot of hurdles on this race, but I haven't stopped fighting. Fighting's important for me. I've fought hard for my community. I've fought hard on the Tempe Union High School District, and I promise you that if I get elected, I will fight hard for you at the Maricopa County Community College District.
Well, Navy guy, 2 seconds to spare. Nice job. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Well, again, I've been through a lot of campaigns over the course of the years, and this is one of the best forums that I've seen. Great questions, great audience response, and I appreciate that. I am really looking forward to running for this office. When I graduated from college, I guess the Jesuits got a hold of me, and they reminded me that my purpose should be, higher purpose, greater good. And I've tried to embody that in whatever I've done in the private and public sector, and to always run positive campaigns, talk about the issues, and never say bad things about your opponents, because they're just like you. They're people running for the right reasons. This is a great opportunity for me to continue in public service. I know District 1 backwards and forwards. Every city, community, the issues that we face in District 1. And I've got a lot of interesting experience that I can bring to bear, a lot of connections that I have through all my years in public service and in private service that I think can help us build coalitions through advocacy and to work in a small board. I love working the board. With all due respect to Mr. Gutierrez, I never wanted to run for the legislature because I didn't want to get the 16 and 31 votes, but I love serving on a 7-member board where I just need 3 other people to agree with me. And so, to the surprise of many in Mesa, I've had a lot of luck with that over the past 20 years. So again, it's really an honor and a privilege to run for this office, and I thank you for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Ms. Thor?
I also want to thank the sponsors and the great audience here tonight. We appreciate you being here. I came back to Phoenix to retire. I did not come back to run for the Maricopa Community College's governing board. However, I had only been back a couple days when I came to realize that this is a really critical election for the future of these colleges. And people kept saying to me, if not you, then who? So I felt that I had to step up and give it my best try. I am extremely honored to have the enthusiastic endorsement of the Maricopa Community College's Faculty Association, PAC, and to be endorsed by every retired college president, chancellor, and vice chancellor with whom I worked and who still live here in the Valley. And I'm grateful for the endorsement of many former and current elected officials and representatives of the business community. So no matter how the election turns out, that has been a very, very rewarding experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. We could only hope that the one on Wednesday could be this polite and this civil, and that the policies could be discussed at this level. So we were really lucky. Before we go, I do want to acknowledge a few other people here in the audience. We have Johanna Haver, I believe, Haver, the Secretary for the Governing Board from District 3. Johanna, thank you for being here with us tonight. We also have Linda Rosenthal, a board member of the Community Colleges Foundation, as well as a former longtime governing board member. And last, but certainly not least, a political hero, or a political and just personal hero to a lot of us, the chair of the Friends of Public Radio, Evelyn Kasuga. So Evelyn, thank you for being here. This concludes the Maricopa Community College's District Board Candidate Forum, sponsored by Rio Salado Community College, South Mountain Community Colleges, and the Friends of South Mountain, or the Friends of Public Radio, Friends of South Mountain, sorry. Special thanks to our friends from MCTV, audio and visual, tremendous job. Let's give them a round of applause. I'm Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. Good night. Thank you.